Just what the world needed. Another guy with a podcast. But this time we've got Dawn Trenson, most recently VP of Global Digital Sales at the Ceremony of Roses arm of Sony Music Entertainment, formerly FILA and INTERMIX, and also one of our strategic advisors. Today we're helping enterprise retail think about innovation across multi-brand portfolios and balancing personalization with privacy in the AI frontier. Dawn, how should we start thinking about balancing innovation across these different brands?
For starters, being innovative, you can't overinvest in any one solution, right? You want to, budgets are always getting trimmed, especially as we move into Q4, right? Also understand the kind of the vision of all of the stakeholders, which that could be, people often are like, oh, the only stakeholders are, I report to so-and-so. Great. Your clients are a stakeholder, if it's a publicly traded company, if there are other departments, be as innovative as you want, but really kind of dot all your I's and cross all your T's.
You must be casting a remarkably wide net in order to stay up to date with trends across the portfolio, which I'm guessing is influenced by the diversity of regions of each of your corresponding SKUs.
Absolutely. Diversification with geography, and that's both domestic and international, right? You'd be surprised how many folks say, oh no, I only handle North America or I only handle US. State by state, it matters. I think it's very important to stay up to date on what's happening in the industry. And, that's not to say that you have to do everything just because competitor A did it. Competitor A doesn't know who you are. They don't care. Move on, figure out if it's right for you, do the work, and really network, right? Stay abreast of what your peers are doing, not necessarily your competitors, but other people, other folks who have the same responsibilities as you, the same title, same responsibilities, network all day. You'd be surprised. Most people are pretty normal, I would say, or accommodating in this industry and will like to talk and will tell you all of their, their mistakes, their wins, their losses, etc.
That's actually really interesting learning for us because you're not really competing against each other. You can share wins and I guess inspire others. Maybe it's no surprise you're working with creative people. Why can't you be similarly creative and inspire others as well?
Exactly. Because I feel like folks who are super guarded or like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. I can't talk about it. It's kind of like old timey and nobody's looking for your secret sauce and nobody has the secret sauce. If you did, you wouldn't be, you wouldn't have a job. You wouldn't have the 9 to 5.
And actually, I think now would be the perfect time to partake in such an exchange. Let's jump into some hot takes. I love asking guests what underrated trends or variables leaders might miss out on. They're, focusing too much on AI these days.
I always like to say first, other than my joking aside about Apple stalking me, but I will say, AI can be a little creepy, right? And depending on who your customer is or kind of how knowledgeable just about things that they are, right? They might also think it's really creepy. Like, well, what do you mean? How does it know? Leaders really need to be cognizant of protecting your first party data, right? There are a lot of, if we just kind of look out there at some of the social shopping opportunities, some of the alliteration for the name of a social network, and then with shop after it, they take your first party data, right? Everything they're doing is powered by AI. Oftentimes you'd be hard pressed to find an individual at that alliteratively named company who knows what first party data is, neither here nor there. They take that. You don't own that. So your win is not really a win. Also to think, like, if we kind of go back to the dark ages when we came up, what's MySpace, right? Remember that? If we think about that, is that the way that AI is going to go? Say that to say you don't want to end up with a vendor, a partner promising returns and et cetera, financial wins, and you're going to look great and you're going to make $1 million with just sprinkle some AI on it. You don't want to be at the guinea pig. No disrespect to guinea pigs. No animals were harmed. So you have that. So it's kind of like, why not think of other use cases, right? Maybe perhaps an internal solution. Do something, use AI in a way that it could improve your business operationally, the part that, how the sausage is made on the inside, right? I've seen some really great use cases there with AI, and then you're not impacting a data breach, freaking your customers out.
Well, let's stay true to our name and continue to give a platform to your voice. Now, I'm just as cognizant about the future as a hungover SDR spamming our inbox after a night of Brother Jimmy's fish bowls. I know that's a little specific. But what's the future of e-commerce that you'd like to see? And yeah, no judging.
Honestly, it's all about, and not to sound, we could be recording this any day, anytime. I feel like this is somewhat of a political answer, but I would say this before that: collaborative, streamlined, and true omni-channel digital, right? Like a unified approach. How can we kind of put all of the things together? It's interesting when often in more recent experiences, when I say omni-channel, I'm told, oh no, we don't have store. We're just selling t-shirt. We just have this website, right? I'm like, okay, you have Amazon, you have Etsy, you have fans, etc., that are selling things on Etsy. You have all of those different things. Wherever your name and likeness is used, that could represent a channel conflict. You have all of your goods that are being sold at Hot Topic, Zoomies, all of those shops in the mall. I always like to say to the kid in Iowa, and I somewhat of a mistake, because as much as I say that, I used to work with someone who was like, my wife's from Iowa, right? And I'm like,
It's a matter of speech. I think we're all excited for the competency of all these enhancements, but only if done responsibly. And
yes.
I just know from our previous conversations, you actually have a pretty refreshingly conservative perspective of AI adoption and actually have some valuable watch out to leaders who might jump a little bit too early into adopting like half baked use cases. So I'll ask you, how do you think about finding the right threshold between personalization and then going too far and thinking about compliance risk?
It's compliance risk, and then it's, that's obviously governance compliance. Like, I've been with some large organizations that have massive legal departments and so on and so forth, infosec, all of that. I really like that. I've learned a lot from those folks, right? And I've been in those positions at seemingly on the precipice of like when things are happening, like ADA compliance, who's that, right? Like things like that, really interesting stuff. And now, kind of add to the mix, we have data breaches, right? And that's real. We have data breaches, and we have really loud people, fans, customers, whatever you want to call them, on social media that they have nothing else to do. What is perhaps the most egregious, like I would strongly encourage everyone to think like this. What would happen if you get called out, your brand, if your brand is associated with a person, right? I shopped, or I bought something on abcstore.com, and then the next day my bank account got emptied out. And when I called my bank, they asked me where I shopped, where I had given my information. I said abcstore.com. Doesn't matter if it's true, not true, if they've never, it's done already. And even if it's someone that, you don't need to have the numbers and perceivably a huge voice on social anymore for something to matter or for something to get picked up. That's all it needs to be. No brand can afford that, right? And the scariest thing, I think, is really compromised information, a data leak. They have my information. Like, it was bad enough if we go back to the good old days 5 years ago when greenwashing was a concern. Well, we can't say that we're sustainable. We don't want to be accused of greenwashing.
Sounds like there's a lot of value of maybe extending that evaluation period for stuff that's really long on a product roadmap. Let others rush in with maybe the more inexperienced partner and let them learn those lessons first. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all a really refreshing take, because innovation is inherently an accelerant. I love their products, but I don't think that OpenAI is doing a great job managing their safety and alignment obligations. And I don't really think that's much of a hot take. But we don't talk enough about the people who are actually going to vet these new products and slow down the transformation as really a consequence of placing the customer first. So maybe the best way to navigate the technology that is going to outpace reasonable regulation, and not to be a little bit of a downer there, but yeah, don't be the first through the door, the tip of the spear. I wish I really didn't have so many violent phrasings, but there you go. You get my point.
I feel like we hear about it frequently or see it on the news a lot about the self-driving cars that explode and get in accidents and things like that. And again, like you said, reasonable regulation, but often there are some rules that are or regulations that are in place because somebody had to check a box and like, okay, did that. But it really take a step back and find really the average, what you think might be the average customer, the guy on the street, whatever, right? I used to do this with the last singular brand that I was at. I had a fantastic third-party customer service team, and I'd get them all on the phone at least once a month, literally just to ask questions. Like, so what do you guys think? Hey, if you had a really good interaction with customer service from another brand, or maybe you got an email that you were really like, this is cool, or maybe there was an offer, a promotion, or something that you really liked for whatever reason, bring it. Let's talk about it. Let's kind of round table and I learned so much, and we expanded that to even folks on my warehouse team. I'd invite them to the party too. Warehouse team, interns, kind of people that were seemingly far from like the corporate business and did not run the risk of like getting in the echo chamber of talking to yourself.
Don, I can't say enough good things about how I've experienced your leadership. And this is just another example about how I can feel a little bit more reassured when I talk to leaders in retail and know that the right people are these influencing gatekeepers to push back on the technology in the right places. While I consider your thoughtfulness a win, our audience also knows we love asking about war stories. And let's be honest, I wear enough hats here that I'll take that templated solution on the podcast. So zooming out and reflecting on your career, I'd love to hear a story about how your team put out a fire or built something uncommonly difficult.
My spoiler was my personalization survey, which was pretty good. I think as far as a very, we'll call it a bespoke fire to put out, this is fantastic. I've told you before, and it's one of your favorites. When I was with running digital for INTERMIX, high-end, RIP, high-end women's multi-brand omni-channel retailer. Whew, that was a mouthful. And the started two brothers owned the business. They made a lot of money selling it to the Gap. Fine. And the Gap had Piper Line before, and Piper Line went away, and they were, trying to kind of get a luxury or a more luxury chip and really learn from that. Smart, right? Learn from that. Be inspired by those leather jackets, right? That kind of thing made perfect sense. There were some things that went with that. I started about 6 months into the transition. It was very interesting going from the brothers that owned the shop to like now this behemoth owns. One of the things that we were made to do to utilize some shared services, right, with our sister brands. That included warehousing, so shipping to consumers, and customer service. Warehousing, really interesting because Old Navy will ship their vertical, their manufacturing, those sweatpants they're selling for retailing for $14.99. Maybe they were $1.50 to make, and that's high end. Maybe we were omni-channel, multi-brand retail, so $5,000 gown that is a designer gown, we are spending that's worth $3,000 maybe for us. Like, it's bad. So, and customer service was interesting. Also, everyone tried their best, tried really hard. They were used to an Old Navy customer, people calling about their points or cash or whatever rewards you get. And here we are, we're selling $2,000 leather jackets, and we don't let this designer appear next to that designer. So totally different thing. Okay. So at the time, we were selling, I could say the name, Golden Goose sneakers that are now a bit commoditized now, knocked off and available everywhere. This was, at the time, Barney's was still open, and Golden Goose was very, very selective with what retailers they would sell to. So, and they would tell you, retailer, what you are buying, how much you are buying, etc. Brilliant business model. So we were one of the chosen ones. Cool. So we had, and now customer service, I sadly used to get, I could listen to them at any time that I wanted. I'd get a recording every day, right? And there were some issues with pronunciations. We had to have kind of clinics where it's like, okay, we're going to take you through the correct pronunciation of each designer. Some of them are really strange, I get it, but you can't butcher. So Golden Goose sneakers. So at the time, we had these zebra print, furry Golden Goose sneakers that were like the be all end all. Everyone wanted them. They sold out very quickly. I'll never forget this. All of a sudden, and thank goodness this wasn't like Instagram, like, yes, those things were prevalent, not as much as now, but I was on my way commuting back from Fishkill, New York, the old Navy warehouse that we were moving into, back to the office when the California Department of Fish and Wildlife contacted. And what a strange name, right? The California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm like, did somebody I don't know, apply for like a fishing license and not tell me and use my, right? Came to find out that it was for those zebra fur products that we were selling on our website. It was like zebra fur, and it was like, aren't they? That's like an endangered species, I think. Like, and they literally called me. They didn't like that. I was like, I mean, I'm just asking. Like, and how big game hunt? Like, how do you even get a zebra from A to B? So I was like, okay, so I called I got off the phone. I may or may not have pretended my phone broke up and hung up on them. Called our manager for customer service. Said, what's going on? I said, I just got a phone call from California Fish and Wildlife. And she goes, yeah, we've all been talking about it, those zebra sneakers. It's called pony skin, but it's like, it's, whatever. They're not, she was like, oh, they're not zebra? I said, no, they're not. You think they're zebra fur? And she's like, oh, okay. And I could tell by like her, it's like, what happened? Right. So apparently a customer called customer service to inquire which one of our retail stores had these in stock in her size. And she was in California, and the customer service representative unfortunately mistakenly said to her, said the zebra skin sneakers. And so the customer was like, zebra skin? There's zebra skin? So she then, word then got around
Oh, of course.
at the mom coffee clutch about those zebra skin Golden Goose sneakers. It was a disaster. It was especially, it was quite funny because prior to the acquisition, Gap coming in, Intermix did a really pretty significant business selling fur, right? So fox fur, rabbit fur, like significant, and that was a big no-no when it came where Gap was concerned, right? So we couldn't sell fur anymore. So we were able to sell shearling. There were certain regulations also in California with like shearling where it's suede on the outside, fur on the inside, but then that all went away. But so the idea that we were so concerned or cognizant, I should say, of different fur and different skins and whatnot, but we were selling zebra skin sneakers, while ridiculously expensive. They were maybe they were $750 or $850. I remember saying that to customer service. I said, could you imagine if we were selling real like endangered species sneakers? wouldn't they be more expensive?
Yeah, that's a deal. Wait a minute.
Yeah. It's like,
How did you get the mess? Or, yeah, I mean, there's the legal fire for sure. Do you even try to get towards the PR area of this, or do you think it'll just dissipate? Like, how do you deal with that customer interaction?
fortunately, thank God, it was before 2015, 16. While there was still social media and still that happening, it wasn't as much of a hurdle or double-edged sword as it is now, right? I think if that were to happen now, it would be a disaster.
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, again, I think reassuring that different marketplaces, the logistics behind them, it's never a quiet day for you. And while I wish that your life could be filled with a lot more serenity, I'm glad we have someone like you who could be on top of this. And actually, I think really to that point, let's think about that next generation of leaders, the senior managers now who will become that next cohort of VPs. Have any career advice for them? I always ask leaders when they come on the show.
Honestly, stay curious, right? Stay curious, ask questions. Quite a cliche to say there are no stupid questions, because there certainly are stupid questions. I'll tell you all about them. But ask questions, be respectful, ask questions. And it is true. What you're asking, there are probably 10 other people that wonder the same thing. And if you're not asking, then what? And that staying curious and wanting to learn and wanting to know what comes next, that's so important. So important. And don't be afraid to break the rules. There's not a manual. There's not a rule book. Just because this one, XYZ person did it doesn't mean that you should do it. So chart your own course, make your own path. I was quite known for, at a previous company, I used to quote Jay-Z in all of our meetings with our international team, which sometimes it went over, sometimes it did. Like,
Very much the culture around here.
I always think back advice, if I think about that, 21 Savage said it on a J. Cole record. It's a little bit old, but he, it just hit. I disrespect you respectfully. That's words to live by.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week to uncover more of the evolving retail landscape and understand the consensus voice of its leaders. Because above all else, what hip hop artist you quote in a board meeting, VOX wins.